Now, optimistic, I know sometimes we're like, well, are you glass half full or are you glass half empty? But actually, the science teaches us that there is power in perspective. Optimism is looking at any situation and seeing that there's a range of ways that I could view a circumstance or situation that I find myself in. And that's true. I can look at it through the lens of optimism. I can look at it through the lens of pessimism. And I cultivate more resilience when I make a choice about how I see something. I'm not going to be like a dumb beast just looking at a situation, must see it as negative, must see it as horrible. I'm going to look for the silver lining in the clouds. That's how we cultivate resilience. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. I just want to take a couple of moments here today to share with you 15 ways to cultivate resilience. And why am I giving you 15? Well, because I got to give you more than one. And why do I want to give you more than one? Because every one of us has different ways that we can cultivate resilience within our own lives. And in other words, maybe there's one that really works well for me. Maybe there's two or three. But if I just give you those one or two or three, it might be difficult for you if those don't really work for you. And so I thought by giving you 15 here today, that I would give you a nice range of options to choose from so that when you're next faced with that moment where you need to cultivate and walk in your resilience, that you'll have the opportunity to do that. So let's just dive right in. 15 ways that we can cultivate resilience. Number one is you've got to honor your body. You got to honor your body. Now, the one thing that I like to think about, and I went through a major transformation a few years ago. Maybe you've seen pictures. You go to my social media, you'll see where I was to where I am today. You know, I lost about 40 pounds of fat, gained about 10 pounds of muscle. Right now, I'm a little over 50 years old, and I'm sitting at about 9% body fat and about 45% muscle. I think I'm in really good shape for my age. And I had to shift my mind before I shifted my body. What I mean by that is that my mindset needed to shift towards honoring my body. It was kind of like the realization that this is really the only body that I have, at least at this point. They can't take my brain and, transport it into your body. And so I got this one body, and I got to work with it. And so one of the most important things about building resilience is to operate and to treat your body with honor. Now, I think that means a lot of things to a lot of people, but definitely one question that I'll ask you to think about is, am I honoring my body or am I dishonoring it? I just encourage you to honor it, whatever that looks like for you. The second thing that will help you to develop resilience, and this is the second way to cultivate resilience, is self-care. Now, self-care is a really interesting thing. I don't want to get so much into the specifics of it, like, hey, you need to take a bubble bath. Hey, you need to light a candle. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. I want you to think about self-care more conceptually. I want you to think about it through the lens of being kind to yourself. I want you to think about it through the lens of operating in a place where you actually care for you. Do you care for you? And if you care for you, what does that care look like? What does that care feel like? And then to ensure that you create a way that you can give more of that love and compassion and kindness to yourself. Because when you do, that self-care is going to elevate your life and it's going to completely change your experience. And so the second way to cultivate resilience is self-care. The third is to forgive. Now, I guarantee you the experts have not told you about this enough. I'll tell you, so much of our society today is driven by division. It's driven by anger. It's driven by resentment. We are dividing ourselves rather than uniting ourselves. And I know that there's a lot of good reasons for that. I'm not trying to blame anybody. But one of the things that I like to think about when it comes to my resilience is, what am I doing to forgive people? Now, there's a big difference between forgiveness and the restoration of relationship. Just because you forgive somebody does not mean that you are going to restore that relationship with them. Maybe they burned the bridge and the bridge is burned and you don't want to rebuild it. That is 100% okay. There are a lot of people in my life that I have forgiven that I may never have a relationship with again. But forgiveness is not for them. Forgiveness is for me. I'm not forgiving for that individual. I'm forgiving because it lends itself to my mental health. Buddha said that a person who hangs on to anger is like a person who drinks poison thinking that it's hurting the other person. And of course, it doesn't hurt the other person. It hurts you. And so forgiveness is the most selfish act you can do that actually will help you to cultivate that resilience. The fourth way that we can cultivate resilience is with gratitude. Now, gratitude and forgiveness in some ways can go hand in hand. And what is gratitude? Gratitude is, rather than walking around with an attitude of entitlement where you believe that, everybody deserves to give you the very best and should be doing this for you and should be doing that for you. Gratitude is you walking around almost with an attitude of wonder. No matter what you face, no matter what you walk through, no matter what you experience, gratitude does more for your mental health than it does for anyone else. My wife and I, we teach our kids, say thank you. Every time, say thank you. Why? Because we want them to grow up with an attitude of gratitude. I'm not teaching our daughter to say thank you to me because I need to hear it. I'm teaching her because she needs to say it. There's power in gratitude, and that power is resilience. The fifth way that we can cultivate resilience is by being optimistic. Now, optimistic, I know sometimes we're like, well, are you glass half full or are you glass half empty? But actually, the science teaches us that there is power in perspective. Optimism is looking at any situation and seeing that there's a range of ways that I could view a circumstance or situation that I find myself in. And that's true. I can look at it through the lens of optimism. I can look at it through the lens of pessimism. And I cultivate more resilience when I make a choice about how I see something. I'm not going to be like a dumb beast just looking at a situation, must see it as negative, must see it as horrible. I'm going to look for the silver lining in the clouds. That's how we cultivate resilience. Number 6 is we've got to learn to cope. Coping leads to resilience. There are some things within your life that you may not be able to change, but you can cope with. And I think that sometimes we're working so hard to fix the system and tear down the system that maybe the best strategy is to learn how to cope a bit better. Because if you cope a bit better, then you can master the system. And when you master the system, then you can change it. It's very difficult to change a system that you haven't yet mastered. And so one of the most important qualities or ways that we cultivate resilience is by coping effectively. The 7th way that you can cultivate resilience is by finding your flow. Now, when you think about this idea of flow, I want you to imagine that there is a peak mental and emotional state that you can operate in. And when you're operating in that peak mental or emotional state, do you know what ends up happening? You produce more. You feel better. And rather than doing something that drains you, you actually do something that nourishes you and that replenishes you and that builds you. Why am I saying this here today? I'm saying this here today because if you can find your flow, you will cultivate your resilience. That takes me to number 8, and that is mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is one of the most effective ways we develop resilience because it keeps us in the moment. I've heard it described, mindfulness, I've heard it described as that I'm not living in the future, I'm not living in the past, but I'm right here and I'm in this moment. What I have found is that the more I'm like living in the future or living in the past, the less my resilience. The more I'm in this moment and I just have to manage this moment well, that's when my resilience goes up. The 9th way that we can cultivate resilience is with empathy. Now, this isn't so much empathy towards ourselves because we've already talked about self-care, but this is more about empathy towards other people. Do you know that in my job, I actually have a job, and that's running my business. I'm a coach and I'm a trainer and I run actually several businesses. And so in my businesses, I have the opportunity to meet with people all the time. And because I'm often their boss or their coach, it's amazing how I may show up at work feeling a little discouraged, but I just have to wait 5 minutes because in 5 minutes, somebody's going to come into my office and they're going to have a problem And I then have an opportunity to exercise empathy. And the moment I exercise empathy towards them, guess what happens to my own resilience? It goes up because it feels good to be empathetic. It feels really good. And if you need some resilience, go find somebody who needs some empathy. The 10th way that we can cultivate resilience is with kindness. Now, kindness is a little different from empathy. They're very closely connected, of course. But empathy is a lot about how you listen. Are you listening with understanding? Are you listening with a sense of authenticity and vulnerability? Whereas kindness is you actually going out of your way to do something to benefit other people. I don't think kindness is just a descriptive word. I think kindness is a verb. She showed me kindness. He acted towards me in kindness. What do people mean? Maybe they bought me lunch. Maybe they got coffee for the person in the drive-thru behind them. But there's something about not just being empathetic, but also exhibiting and exerting kindness that changes your life. You know, I tell you, we just did in our church a walk for hope. And the walk for hope was just about raising money for clean drinking water in the Congo. It was so amazing. Most of the people who showed up for that walk, we were walking 6 kilometers. We raised a bunch of money. We sent it overseas because we're in Canada, Congo's in Africa. And I'll tell you, most of the people who showed up were kids and young people under 18. Now, we had a good selection of adults there, and that was great too. But it was so awesome to see kids who wanted to show kindness. And I'll tell you what, they're building resilience. When they're showing kindness towards somebody else, they're building resilience towards themselves. Number 11, the 11th way we can cultivate resilience is by breathing. Next time you find yourself losing your marbles, losing your resilience, losing your place of peace and calm, just breathe. Just breathe. Breathe in that peace, breathe in that calm, breathe in that strength, breathe in that resilience. Breathe out that toxicity. Breathe out that negativity. Breathe out that negative stress. Breathe out that anxiety. Tell you what, there's power. There's unbelievable power in your breath. The 12th way that we can cultivate resilience is by living with purpose. I'll tell you what, every single day, what is your purpose? And I like to think about my purpose through the lens of I'm going to live today. I want to fully live, but I want to learn today. What can I learn? And number 3, I want to love. I want to give. I want to serve. I want to support. If you need a purpose, reach out. I've got a purpose for you, okay? If you're really struggling, I'll give you a purpose, and it won't be to benefit me. It'll be to benefit all the people around you. But I'll tell you what, to the degree that our purpose increases, to that same degree, our sense of resilience will go as well. Number 13, the 13th way we can cultivate resilience is through healthy relationships. Enough said. I don't need to expand on that. If you surround yourselves with toxic people, you will have toxic inner world. But if you have healthy people, your inner world will be healthy as well. Number 14, set goals. It feels good to set a goal and to hit it. Number 15, and with this I'm going to close. How do I cultivate resilience? Grieve. Grieve. Allow yourself to let go. Let go of relationships that aren't serving you. Let go of jobs that are hurting you. Let go of experiences and trauma from your past that may have wounded you, and know what it is to embrace your new future, your new destiny, and the new you. So these are 15 ways to create and to cultivate resilience within your life. I would love to hear your comments. Which of these 15 actually work best for you? Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you would like to connect with us, go to flourishingworkplace.com. And we'd love to talk with you about how we can help you and your workplace to cultivate resilience. Thanks so much for tuning in.